Are you looking for something affordable, unique, and fun to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High-quality metal pinback buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $38 for 100 buttons shipped inside the U.S. Message me on IG at EverythingRemade to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine, where you can go to sign up and support the show, get music sneak peeks, read zines, and so much more. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Trancers by William Covert, which is the first single from his upcoming LP, Dream Vessel, which releases October 17th.
And for me, that catalyzing event is kind of funny because I know exactly the moment when I wanted to do drums basically forever. And it's one of those things where I grew up very small town in Michigan. I grew up on what was my great-grandparents' farm. We were like out in the middle of the country. Not a lot going on as a kid. And my mom was a piano player. My dad was a clarinet player. So there was always like music going on in my house. And, you know, my parents were like kind of ex-hippie dippy a little bit. So a lot of music going on as a kid. They were encouraging with music. But I remember watching a documentary with my dad on the history of rock and roll. This is going to sound probably so lame. but I'm watching this documentary in the history of rock and roll because we like didn't have cable. It was like on PBS or whatever. And there's like nothing else going on. This is just what you're doing with your life or whatever. And they were showing video footage of the Monterey Pop Festival 1967. So it was like, I was like maybe about 12. And it was like videos of like Jimi Hendrix and The Who specifically. And they were just like, you know, because videos from like the 60s, they're these like young rock bands. But it was just like the energy. And I think for me, it was just something that kind of grabbed me of some sort of relatability where I was like, man, the drums specifically, so loud, so powerful. It's like these guys are just wailing, having a lot of fun. They look super goofy, doing kind of like whatever, this like youth rebellion thing or whatever. And it was just something that kind of like grabbed me, where I immediately just felt like I could do that. And not only could I do that, I want to do that. And I'm sitting there in this farmhouse looking around, and I'm like, man, being on stage, how much fun, like watching like old Jimi Hendrix videos, just like how much he was into it, having fun. I'm like, wow, that looks just so much better than what's going on here, like nowhere, Michigan. And
Yeah.
that was kind of it. That was kind of the, at least the catalyst for me. Where then I was like telling my parents, like, I think I want a drum set. I think I want to do this. And they were like, okay. And like my dad got me a drum set. I got my first actual kit when I was 14. And then it was just, starting to do the rabbit hole stuff. I mean, I had a lot of things converge for me, not to show my age, because I'm probably about to sound like someone from the Great Depression or 30s or something. But when I was 14, it was like I got my first drum kit. We had just got our first computer with the internet, and like Napster was a brand new thing. So like I had this convergence of, wow, just getting connected to the internet, discovering like you can just download songs even though it took like, like 8
Overnight.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing that. We had like the rules in my house where it was like you couldn't use the internet until like after 8 o'clock at night. So in case someone was calling, right? So you'd like plan the song you want to download, do it overnight. You'd hope when you wake up the next day it's like good. I try to listen to it before going to school or whatever. But it was like that kind of like, I just got this drum kit. I'm on the internet now, and everything just felt like new and fresh. And it was, for me, that's how I found like punk music and like um post hardcore, and like kind of all those bands was just kind of like the deep diving into like early message boards and like Napster and all that stuff. But like the catalyst one, that the memory I specifically have, was watching this PBS history of rock and roll documentary, and I was like, man, that just looks so much more fun
Yeah.
than like than what my parents are doing, living out on this farm. And I'm like, man, okay, drums, that seems pretty cool.
And then later you're like, oh, it was also drugs. Like it was a lot of drugs
Yeah,
that they,
yeah,
which is like, that's not. I mean, it's not a prerequisite to the experience. But when you're looking at that, like as a 12-year-old, you're hopefully like your brain doesn't go there instantly, so you're just
right.
like, whoa, that looks amazing, like look how weird and how out there and how like really zoned into this they are, and just like they're in their own world, but they're like on top of the world at the same time, and it's like the music was a lot of that, and then there was also, they were aided by substances in some instances, or most instances. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It's I can't imagine like if that I can't imagine like my formative experiences being like seeing Jimi Hendrix or something, because like, I mean, that's that's mind melting. That's like an all time great. I
right.
I mean, arguably, like there are people that would say the same thing about like, I don't, one of my earliest memories is watching, what is it, Jailhouse Rock or something, and thinking
Oh yeah,
like, oh, and so some people like, but obviously that's very complicated with that particular musician. And I don't know. I mean, I was like a baby, so you got to forgive me. I just saw a guy like dancing cool, and people liked him, and I
right.
was like, and also like when I learned how to do those dances, my mom paid attention to me, so like that was
Mm.
nice too. So like, um, I don't know. I don't think that's why I ended up playing guitar. I ended up playing guitar because like, it's because it gave me something to do with my like frustration and like this
Yeah.
part of my brain that I couldn't itch before, But yeah, like so it was always drums for you, just like straight off the bat.
Yeah, I later on, couple like teenager, got a guitar, got into like guitar too. I've always played guitar for like 25 years. But yeah, the first it was always drums, like right out of the gate. And I think part of that probably stems from, this is like psychological deep dive, but yeah, like my mom was a piano player, and just kind of like my earliest memory of just like enjoying music would be, my mom would like be playing piano, and I would like to sneak into the room. So she's playing and she like wouldn't hear me there, and I would like sit on the floor and try to rhythmically tap out, like, I didn't even really know what rhythms were or anything, but I was just like trying to rhythmically play along to what she was doing.
Yeah, yeah,
So like very early on, like I was really the rhythm stuff like appealed to me.
yeah, yeah. It's
Um,
I don't know. I I've noticed that honestly with all of my children, and two of my kids have gotten behind the drum set and like literally played something like that like was a decent beat, like just got behind and did it. One of my kids has never done that. But it's, yeah, I don't know. Where I was going with this is I wonder what happens in in the instances where people just like, I have to think that this is kind of something that a lot of people go through, or a majority of people go through, just like this curiosity and this like trying to find like the rhythm or the source of like, and what
yeah.
happens later when it's just like, I suppose it's just like anything else, it's just another interest comes along that takes that place. But yeah, it's always something to me where I'm like, what's the difference between us and like people that play in bands for like 3 years and then they're just cool like not doing it, like,
Yeah.
you know I don't.
I mean, I will say I was very lucky as a kid that I had a band teacher who really pushed me.
Yeah.
Because it was like I got I'm 14, I'm playing drums. My parents, they're just like, well, you should probably, they're like, I think I don't remember this specifically, but I think that was like part of the deal. If I got this drum kit, they wanted me like being banned. Like you got to learn music like formally kind of thing. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure, whatever. And I did band, and probably around like maybe my freshman year. It's like I'm in high school now. You're trying to figure out life, and I was about maybe like almost done with it. I was like, I don't know. That'd make me playing drums for like 9 months or something, and it was like none of the, my graduating high school class was 45 people.
Oh
So
wow.
it's like there wasn't really bands in my school, so it wasn't like this huge pool of people to play with. So it's like I got into drums, I'm really into it, I was really into listening to music, but then I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, there's no one here to even play with. And I had a band teacher who kind of went behind my back and like told my parents, like, hey, he's got some potential, like keep pushing him on the drums, like don't let him get up. And but my parents didn't, they were like, you know I had my drum set up in like my bedroom next to my parents' bedroom, and I can't even imagine at like a 15-year-old what I was doing and what they put up with and what that had to sound like, but they put up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I feel like that is what really kept me going. Was I had friends, who also were like, "Oh, I'll learn guitar. Let's start a band." And then they got their first amp, and their parents are immediately like, "You're not playing that in my house." You know,
Yeah.
where where eventually I was the kid. Once I had like my first actual band, we practiced at my house.
Yeah.
So, like my parents became the band parents. My dad had the van. They're driving us to the gigs. So I feel there I was pretty lucky that I feel like if I didn't, I needed that like encouragement. That got me to a point where once I was playing shows, It's like on the space shuttle. I needed those booster rockets, and then once I got up there far enough, now I'm like, all right, now we're good.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
because I think that's what was that?
you said that your parents were fairly musical themselves, and I can only, like you said, oh, I can't imagine what people were putting up with. I can only speak from my own experience, but as somebody who values music as much as I do, and my kids are playing, like they could suck. It doesn't matter. Whatever is coming out of that bedroom is beautiful to me because like
Mm.
it it's and I'm not like I like playing video games. I like reading comic books and all of this stuff as well. So I'm not trying to be like that, but it's like this is your kid trying to create something, trying to express themselves, you know, and that to me is beautiful. And I know that not everybody's parents are like that, but maybe that's maybe that's how your parents were at least some of the time because like you said, like why else would you? It would drive you up a wall if you
Yeah,
didn't have that kind of outlook on it. I guess but
yeah, yeah. I totally agreed. I feel that was probably a huge reason for me to keep doing it. I mean, again, it was also like we're on this farm in rural Michigan. There wasn't like I think my parents probably noticed it even before I did. Like I was at least playing the drums every day. I had an interest in that. There wasn't much else really going on. And it's like I
hmm
I did sports. I did sports because that was like that's what you did, but it wasn't anything that really kind of like really grabbed me. So I think my parents at least saw like okay, he's doing this or like once I was playing in band, it's like oh the bands are practicing here. It's like they knew where I was,
yeah,
like
that's
that kind of thing too.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so yeah, that kind of like kept just kind of got the fire really going for me.
Yeah,
Um,
it's wild. 45-person graduating class, like that's like smaller than mine. And I'm always like, yeah, my high school was small. I think I'm from a small
yeah,
town, but yeah, um, we, we had like in our high school, it's weird now when I think about it because like I went to high school with the bass player from Circle Takes the Square and the drummer
wow.
from this post-hardcore band called Junius. And like
Oh, okay, yeah,
yeah, I went to high school with both those people. And so it's weird when I say like there weren't that many people to play music with in my high school. There was like seven of us. You know what I mean? So like so it's like I want to start a band that sounds like this, but this other person want to start a band that sounds like that. So you end up in this real weird band that doesn't sound like any of the stuff you want it to sound like, but you're in a band, so you're having a great time. But like, yeah, if you take that, ours was like 200. So if you cut that in to 20% of that, yeah, you're definitely like, there's literally no, like, I have, and that might like, you know, if you stayed in that kind of environment, then that would make what you're doing now like make that much more sense, because you're like,
yeah,
I had to learn how to play stuff completely by myself. um, but yeah, I mean, so like eventually you did get in bands and like you said, your parents were driving you to shows and stuff. What were like your first bands like, and what was counting for a show then, like a birthday party kind of situation? Or
man. Yeah, a lot of my early shows. Well, I'll say the first band. Oh man, this is gonna sound ridiculous. The first band I ever played in, we were like a pop punk band.
mm-hmm.
I was like 15, I think. I was not old enough to drive. We were called Fuzz Duck,
Okay.
and it was just like, um, at the time, I just wanted to play in a band, and it was like my introduction to Weezer. I do remember that the guitarist was really into Weezer. It's like that he in that like high school kind of mindset where it's like he's dressing like Rivers Cuomo, like he was
Oh.
just,
Yeah.
everything was just Weezer, and and it was kind of my introduction to that kind of music, because it was also the kind of thing where, the internet was pretty dinosaur compared to today, right? So it was like, and we didn't have cable, so I missed a lot of what was going on with like MTV and small high school. So it was like that band kind of introduced me to like what was going on in like alternative music and pop punk, and kind of introduced me to like a lot of that stuff. We were terrible. We were so bad.
But I'll say this,
But
like Fuzz Duck, that's a name that you could Google. Like, there's
true.
something to be said for that, right? Because like there's so many band names now, you Google it and there's like 15 bands that are called that. Like
Right,
you could Google Fuzz Duck and like that you're the only band. So like
right.
that was something.
Um, True. I guess I'll give the band. Um,
For better or
weren't
worse,
very good.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like you got to get in that first band and just play shows, get out there, right? But I'll say a lot of early shows for me. D- I kind of like got into DIY shows almost accidentally. So it's like there's no, I'm in this tiny town. There's nowhere to play. There's no venues.
Hmm.
Uh, but my dad was really involved with our local American Legion. So as a member, he could rent out like the banquet hall, um, for like nothing. So when I was in high school, it was like I'd get my dad. We just did the like book out the date. We were putting shows on at like the banquet hall or local American. That was a lot of them because it was all ages. It was just like the only thing we really knew how to do. Um, so for me too, it was like an early experience of like if I wanted to play a show, I had to figure out how to like put it together and make it work. I remember going to like a Kinko's to make show flyers. Because the thought of like even like you know doing something making it on a computer or something was just so foreign. It was like you just went to Kinko's and made some really crappy flyers or whatever. Posted those
Hmm.
around town. Um, we also had a Methodist church in town that would let bands put on shows in the basement, and I think just as a way of like keeping an eye on the youth kind of thing.
Sure.
Um, so that was like the other spot to play. So it was a lot of church basement shows and like American Legion shows.
Yeah, you were doing like the real mid 90s experience, like without like being conscious that that was like how things actually generally just kind of were. Like, you're not saying that that was mid 90s that you were doing that, just like that's how it was. It was like I saw
Yeah.
I saw Alexis on Fire in like 2003 or something at a Legion Hall, like it was still happening later, but like that, I mean, so many shows like that I had seen, from like 94 to 99 or whatever, were like Legion Hall here, like church basement there. Like don't there was like before some people started doing house shows at the house that I eventually took over and started doing house shows at. Before that, that's like the only place that we would play here in town in Lafayette was like at a Purdue church that just like let bands. They only let bands use it like one Saturday every month or something like that. So it was like sometimes it was like really hard to get it because you would have to wait like 3 months or something, because however many bands, and like only one day a month or something that they'd let them do that. You know what I mean? So,
Uh,
um,
yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. And now I'm just like, I don't even know. Like, I know of like 4 bands in town, like period. And I'm sure there's more, but like, yeah, it's a weird place now, but we'll find out soon enough. Like our last show here was cool, right? But then like I was
Yeah.
like surprised. I was like, how'd that? And then, we'll see what this other spot's like. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's wild, like how you just kind of figure out like, but by sheer necessity. You're like, I know what I need. I know what I need to happen. How do I do that? And we come to it in so many different ways. We were just like, we were renting a warehouse that we weren't even supposed to be practicing in. And we were just like, what if we just tell people to show up and we play for them? And so
Yeah.
you know, that's how I became like, hey, you can just do that. Like as long as you know, it's the whole like, beg forgiveness rather than ask permission thing. It's like, as long as you can like get away with it, or it's not like a serious thing, like it's gonna be fine. Like, and we can do this thing, and it's I don't know, like it's wild now when you can, to me anyway, it's wild now that you can book like a tour or whatever at like actual spaces and stuff, like doing what we do. Like that's so
Yeah.
weird to
Yeah.
me, but like very cool too. Um, but yeah, I think we met, for the first time, obviously, when you were playing in Droughts. So um, that's like by the time you're in Chicago. Like, how did you come to live in Chicago, and how did you get hooked up with, Joe and the rest of them in Droughts?
Yeah. Okay, man. I'll do try to get to Chicago quick here.
Fast
So
forward, yeah.
fast forward. Yeah, so basically I grew up in Southwest Michigan, New Buffalo. So it's like right on that like Michigan Indiana border. So Chicago's kind of it's the nearest city. So I do remember once had a car old enough to go in shows and stuff. I saw I only went to one show at the Fireside Bowl when it was like a before in its like kind of heyday run,
Sure.
and it was Rise Against, and I was like 18. I think I was maybe had just turned 18. I might have still been 17. It was like senior year of high school or whatever. And I had friends who knew about it. I didn't even know what this place was. But it was like at that point we had a car, and it was like if you want we're in Michigan, but it's like if you want to go to a show, basically you're driving to Chicago. You're driving a couple hours. That's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we're driving to like a lot of shows and like all age coffee shops in the suburbs, and to us that's Chicago, but it's like you're driving to like Joliet, really. But then it was like my friend Dustin, he was like, oh, you want to check out this band at a bowling alley in Chicago? And I was like, I don't even care who the band is. I don't even care it's at a bowling alley. It's something to do in Chicago. Yeah, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that probably really framed Chicago to me as like a place to be, I guess. Of just like, you grow up in the shadow of it, like as a family, you'd always like, Chicago's near a city, doing vacations and trips there and doing the museum stuff as a kid. But to like go to like this crazy punk show at a bowling alley, packed to the brim. Probably the first show I really remember going to where people are like crowd surfing and just going really nuts. And I was like, wow. I was like, this is like a whole scene and community. It's so different than what I'm used to. It just kind of like stuck with me. And I ended up going to college up by Grand Rapids, Michigan. Uh, Played in bands up there for years. Saw like La Dispute play like a basement show, this tiny basement. Like, at the time there's like this kind of bubbling kind of math rock, screamo, post-hardcore scene in Grand Rapids. So I kind of like gravitated to that. Did that through college. Stayed in Grand Rapids like a year after I graduated from college, just playing. At the time, I was like freelancing. Actually, I was just like played in whatever gig I could get, and doing that. I was like, I want to do music. I don't want a job. Like, I got to make this work. And I did that for a year. I was teaching music, teaching drums, all this, and I don't know. It was like I was like it got to the point where I was doing music. Now it was kind of like feeling like a job because now it's like it's the weird thing of like, oh, I'm paying my bills playing music, but I'm like I kind of don't like this because I'm not really doing anything that I want to do.
Right.
I was doing like a lot of weird cover band gigs, jazz gigs, like whatever. So then I'm like, well, I think I need to like, step it up or whatever. Like I need to go to the next thing. So it's like, well, Chicago's there. it was like obvious there's a scene there that was just like it just made sense as like the next logical place. And I was like 23, 24, and felt like I did everything I could in like the Michigan scene. So I moved to Chicago, and I started playing in this like post rock, post metal math rock band called Anesthetic. That was like really the first band that like really connected me to the Chicago scene, and it was through that band is how I met Joe and the guys in Droughts. Because the bass player in Anesthetic, who I later played with in the band Space Blood now for decade plus years, he
Okay.
went to high school. He went to high school with Joe, so then it was like through that band I started meeting all these people. Um, and then so I knew had played on a lot of the same shows as the guys in Droughts, and I also knew I had at this point knew like Bobby Marcos and the guys in Native because they were from Northwest Indiana. I actually helped book. I booked Native's first show, which was at the Methodist Church basement in my hometown.
Wow.
So yeah, so like was playing a lot of shows like those guys and La Trek, like all these like kind of like late 2000s kind of like mathy screamo-y kind of bands that were around at the time. So then eventually Droughts and cycled through a couple drummers, and it was like the typical thing where it was like, oh, they had music done and they're gonna have studio time, and they had just had a falling out um, with a dude that was drumming for them for a little bit, and they were kind of like, I think had kind of just like we were like trying to get more of a permanent drum situation going on. Um, so I was like, yeah. So I was like, oh, you guys already got the material. I was super familiar with them, hung out with them enough where I'm like, I knew like socially we'd get along. So then kind of like just fell into the band that way. So it's like, I wasn't the original drummer, but a lot of people, I guess, mostly associate me with that band. I mean, I was definitely the longest tenured drummer, still in the band for like close to it or close to a decade, over a decade, something like that. But anyway, that's kind of how I got into Droughts. Yeah, and for me too, it was like something early days of Chicago that kind of just stuck with me too. Is I felt like every person I met played in like multiple bands or multiple projects, which was very different than I feel like the scene I came from in Grand Rapids was like. So that was something too that I think me in my like early mid-20s brain was like, oh, if I want to be in the scene and be like what these other people are doing, and I'm like, I gotta be, and it's like, oh, it's okay to be in like multiple bands, and it's like okay to like branch out a little bit. So I think that also um kind of like when like the Droughts offer came up where I was like, yeah, I can do this, yeah, I can manage multiple bands, I could do these like different things. And I think it also just started for me too because I was like playing in like more of a math rock stuff, and I was like, oh, this is like it's like it's a different vibe, and it allows you to do different things. It's like a different toolkit in a way. So
Yeah.
um yeah, so and then so that was kind of a cool um just kind of a cool thing too, because it was like I feel like at the time too in Chicago I played in a lot of math rock bands, and I was kind of doing mathy stuff when I was in Michigan, and like getting into the screamo scene and that kind of stuff too. It's like it's kind of a refresh where it's like people don't know you from this other stuff, so you can kind of like, I don't know, just kind of like it's almost like having first impressions with people all over again, which was kind of cool. But yeah, the Droughts, man, that was a lot of shows doing that stuff. Yeah, because I think the show we played for y'all, that was Indianapolis, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I
Okay.
was like, you know, I wasn't sure if you were getting at like, I thought the big reveal there was going to be, I wasn't in the band then or something, but I was like, I was pretty sure that you were.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was in Indianapolis, and we played like outside at that like I don't know like what I don't know what the official like I can't remember the name of the place, and I don't know what you would like call it, but like we played like essentially in like a yard. And it was like there was like some stages, but like it was very strange. It was cool, but it was just like yeah, we were like and my kids were like digging in the dirt and playing and just like yeah. But yeah, that was it's wild like that was so long ago now, and of course it doesn't feel like that long ago necessarily.
It's time to show them you can stand behind the entrance of another fucking man. I'll play the game, feed the crowd. I'll thrash until bleeding out. You'll try to run, try to scheme. You'll try to make it out unseen. Breaking glass against my face. Intimidate to hold my place. Breaking glass against my face.
When I was going through the timeline sort of like you know what I knew of your musical like history, I was like, yeah, like we must have met right around here. Then Droughts lasted until well, the last album was released in 2017, right? But I don't know if you all were actually still a thing then, or if it was like I can't remember like what the deal with the band was necessarily, because I think that I read that the album was actually recorded in 2015. So like
Yeah.
yeah, so I didn't know it was there, but then you went like from Droughts like, and then it's like Rust Ring started like pretty much right around there, and then um you've been doing Space Blood like for a really long time, which I actually had not even heard of, not like heard that is until today, and I was in such a rush. Like I'm like I had air conditioner people here during the day and taking my kids to school and picking my kids up from school. I like just got back. I'm trying to listen to this live Space Blood album. I didn't even get to like the part where apparently y'all do like sketches and stuff, like which is
Yes.
like that's what I was like before we started recording. That's what I was talking about. Like I was like that sounds like my friends back in the day from this band called Sufi Nun Squad. Like so like what's like not to like jump around so much, but how does Space Blood come from anesthetic aesthetic to like, hey, we're just gonna do this other thing which is like wild and it's gonna be hard for people to wrap their heads around, but like musically it's gonna be like kind of like this. Like how's that all come to be?
Yeah. Um, so I'll also say I think Droughts was part of a little of that as well, because it was like I started playing anesthetic around 2010. I moved to Chicago in like 2009, so I'd been in the city about a year. played in like some post-punk bands, played some gigs. That was like the first band that really dug my heels in with. I think with the Droughts guys, I got hooked up with them around 2012. The only thing I was gonna say with the Droughts, kind of the big reveal, is with Droughts, people always love talking about the William Bonney split, and I did not drum on that. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
so I was post William Bonney era, um, but it's like Anesthetic Aesthetic. We were instrumental, influenced by like Russian Circles, Pelican, kind of like that heavier post metal kind of stuff. And you get a lot of people who would always be like, "Oh, it's like, yeah, the music's really cool, but only if only you guys had vocals." Or you get people be like, "Oh man, like, my friend's a great singer. You should have them try out for your band," and like stuff like that.
Right.
Or I think I just after a while I just kind of got used to that, and then when I started playing with Droughts, playing in a band with like vocals again, and just seeing how much people kind of like gravitated towards the vocal element and the lyrics and like what the songs were about and like that connection. It's just kind of like that, like, I don't know, the dichotomy of it, I guess, the contrast just got my brain thinking. So me at the basis of Anesthetic Aesthetic, we were looking to do something different. I think at the time we were really into like Don Caballero and kind of like minus the bear, at kind of like 2000s of math rock where it's like loop pedals to the max kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, well, let's do, and at the time too, it was like all these math rock bands were coming out with like the guitarists, and it was like right around when like the crazy kind of tapping, looping kind of stuff was like really becoming popular. And we're like, well, let's do our own twist on it and do like a bass lead. So it's like not loop tapping guitar, it's just going to be bass and drums. And we were like, well, we didn't really have any intention of doing vocals, like still keeping an instrumental thing. But then it was like, well, it gives us kind of all this room to kind of like just kind of like open it up and do different stuff. So I think it was like, oh, it's another, where our thought was like, people would be like, oh, it's another instrumental math rock band. You guys want any vocals? Like, been there, done that. I've seen that, whatever. So then it was like, well, let's shake it up. Let's like make it more of an experience, or like the kind of thing where it's like the old cliche of like, whether you're good or bad, just don't be mediocre. Do something that someone will remember even if they don't like it.
Sure.
So we're like, we're an instrumental band, so we can kind of like shape these shows however we want. So we started like wearing costumes and then wearing masks, and then it kind of evolved to the point, and I think some of this probably was like in the early days of the band too, of just like not having a lot of material and trying to pad sets a little bit, was like, I think, I don't even remember the initial inspiration, but we had the idea of like doing skits um, on stage. I think some of that comes from like the math rock world, where bands would have goofy song titles or like goofy album covers. So there's like the math rock stuff always had this like element, just a little bit of goofiness. And I think it's like in that kind of genre where people take the music so seriously, I think we were like, let's add some humor into this, like get the tension out of the shoulders. Let's not make it so serious. So we started doing skits, and I think then there's probably a bit of the punk influence too, of like the just like putting our own voice on like what was happening. I would. I don't really watch this show, but I would say it's almost like an influence out of South Park, where it's like, oh, we got a show on Saturday. Well, what happened in the news this week?
Right.
That is just so ridiculous and out of this world that we could like make fun of. And I mean, in like, I will say, like Donald Trump's first term, we did so many shows where we're just killing him on stage and it's finding goofy ways to like. I think in a band where you don't have vocals, it's like, okay, where do we add in that like messaging or like that kind of expression of what we feel for like a social commentary. So it ended up kind of like coming out in the live show through like these skits of just like almost like a Larry David kind of humor of just like pointing out these things that are like so kind of dumb happening in society, and like kind of just doing it through this like goofy lens, almost like a more like a, I don't know, a less um almost like Guar, but I would say less, maybe a little less goofy than Guar. But this kind of lens of like showing, just how like kind of
Absurd.
wild the
Yeah.
times are. Yeah, like
Yeah.
absurdist humor, like a
Yeah.
very like Tim and Eric.
Sure. Do you find that people get what's happening like right away, or do they think you're just talking between the songs and they're like, what, why haven't they stopped and played more songs? Or like, do you feel like people like are like, oh, this is a thing?
Well, yeah, well, so like in the early days of the band, and this was also, I think, kind of like maybe in the philosophy of Space Blood, because it was a lot of the humor we do in the skits too. It's almost tropes of shows, because it's like the kind of thing. To me, the basis of Space Blood, we both worked at a bar in Chicago called Quenchers, um, that closed. When did Quenchers close? Like 2019, but had been open since late 70s. Uh, its probable heyday was probably in the 90s. A lot of like, there's a Steve Albini hangout for a little while. A lot of like noise rock bands played there, and then their guy Space Blood started booking shows there. So I think also the time we were forming this band, we were booking shows at this venue, and it's like this kind of thing where it's like when you're seeing bands play 5 nights a week, and you're just seeing so many bands over and over and over again, and it's like looking back, it's like, well, what shows do I even remember that we booked there or that I worked? Where you
Yeah.
start thinking about like what stuck out to me. So it's like the trope of the band, like, oh, the hello Cleveland, how's everyone doing? Like we just
Yeah.
wanted to make fun of all that. So kind of getting to your question is, in the early days of the band, we didn't talk. What we would do is we would pre-record stage banter. So between songs, we would have a tape machine on stage, and we would hit a play button, and it would be like the pre-recorded banter, like, oh, how's it? Oh, we're Space Blood. How's everyone doing? So it's like we were like not even. So it's kind of like it's immediately like this isn't real.
Camp.
It's like,
Yeah.
yes, like
Yeah.
immediately right off the bat. I think it was immediately kind of like it's like, oh, you're the Space Blood show. This is kind of a different world now. Like this is what you're getting into. I think probably kind of that like David Lynch kind of absurdist kind of thing where it's like people, I think, more were like, what exactly is this, or like what is happening? You're and we would do stuff where we would have plants in the audience. I mean, we would do stuff like, we'd have people come up on stage in the middle of songs, and we would have like just these kind of things that would like break up the show, and then people, it's like, well, is that real? Was that fake? I mean, well, it's one of those funny things too, where just I think just through how the band was and how our shows were, people started getting it, but not so much in the Midwest. Like probably our biggest fan base was in Europe. We ended up touring Europe like half a dozen times and playing a bunch of festivals over there. And I think it's like one of those cultural things too, where it was like once we started touring and getting out there as a band, we're start looking at the analytics on Bandcamp of like where's people actually like listening to stuff and buying it from. It was um, like a non-American audiences kind of gravitated to it a little more. I think maybe because of the absurdism of it. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Um, what is one of those things too? You're like touring around the Midwest and you're playing these shows in like DeKalb, and it's like, man, people are getting it, but they're also just like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But I mean,
yeah, so
like you
that
said, either way, it's like they come away from it like with a different experience than like eh, practically any other band that they had seen. So job well done. Whether it was like,
Right.
whether they're like, wait, now I think about that, that's really cool, or what, or the opposite. Wait, now I think about that, that was ridiculous. Like, but it's memorable for sure.
Yeah, so I think we were always trying to. That was kind of the angle. It's like even if people didn't like us, you tend to remember the band of like, oh, the guys on stage in their underwear and masks on, chugging Malort, shooting confetti cannons at the audience. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. One of like the first band that I ever toured with was just a just a hardcore punk band, but that was sort of the vocalist of that band's philosophy as well, which was just like, you know, like whatever we go out there and do, it's going to be like we're going to leave an impression, So whether it was like, you know, um, running like running across like a bunch of motorcycles, like when he was specifically told to stay away from the motorcycles, or like whether it was like um, bringing out a briefcase full of pornography and tearing the pages and throwing them into the crowd.
oh wow.
Whatever it was, it was it was gonna be different. It was gonna be something wild happening. But yeah, it's that sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know how much y'all play out still, but it would be. I think that would be a lot of fun. So like right now, like you've been like more or less like primarily focused on these last couple of solo albums that you put out. Like you put one out earlier in the summer. There's one coming out next month. Like you've been putting out, solo stuff like for quite a while now, but from what I could tell, it's like I think it was the first one that you did in 2019, and
Yep.
then the next one was that one was synthesizer music for synthesizer drums. That was 2019. Then there was Time Fog in 2022. But then like this year, you're just like, fuck it, I'm doubling my output in like just a few months. Like, where did the sort of like burst of inspiration, or like to just get these songs done, get them out there, or these, I'm not sure exactly how much you planned this before you started recording them, or whether it was just like you had larger concepts that you were like, I have this and I have this, because the one you released in July is called Dream Void, and then this one that's coming out October 17th is called Dream Vessel. So obviously there's something going on between the two records. Like there's a there's a bridge somewhere. Now in my brain, I'm automatically thinking, so is there a third one called Dream Something Else, and that's going to wrap it up? Like you know what I mean? In your story brain, it's like you've become conditioned to think everything is a trilogy. So maybe that's not it, or maybe not. But like, what was the impetus for like, yeah, I'm doing two of them, and I'm gonna do it like this, and like how are they joined like thematically, or like musically in a like I don't know what the word I'm like spiritual way, or what, like for lack of a better word.
No, I think thanks for asking. It's a great question there. And yeah, for me with the solo stuff, I started doing it, several years ago. I was playing solo shows for a few years before my first album came out. I think it was one of those things, playing in Chicago, it was like everyone's always playing in different bands, and the solo stuff for me just kind of became a place of having also played melodic instruments, guitar, and I got really into synthesizers, which then during the pandemic put me down a whole rabbit hole where I built a modular system and got really into like modular synths and analog synths and all that kind of stuff. So it was really just kind of an outlet of like music composition and like that kind of stuff. And it was always something I was doing on the side and kind of was putting out albums and playing shows, the typical band thing, right? It's like you write all these songs, you do the album cycle, you do the touring, and then kind of go dormant for a while. So the solo stuff for me was always popping up when like other bands were like kind of in the dormant stage, didn't have stuff going on. And I think in really the more past couple years coming out of COVID, I just kind of felt more, I guess, maybe confident in my own, or also just from an output standpoint, was just writing a lot more music, where I was like, I don't really think this fits for a band. It's just gonna go in like the solo song pile or whatever. So with the new stuff that's come out this year, Dream Void and Dream Vessel, I think part of it, the kind of cohesion there, is almost all the music on it is improvised.
Okay.
And so I think for me too, like even thematically thinking in terms of um even the title Dream Vessel, to me that is more of a representation of kind of like expressing what is happening just like subconsciously, like that stream of consciousness, we're going to hit record and see what happens kind of thing. So both of the albums were recorded in the same studio session.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I was very gracious that our good friend Nate was cool with what I wanted to do from a recording standpoint. I think something also different with Dream Void and Dream Vessel conceptually was my earlier solo stuff. Everything was kind of written to be played live. The project kind of, I was playing shows for years before the first album came out. So I kind of wrote everything in a way where it had to be done live. So the early first two solo albums, everything was like, for me, I was going in the studio and recording everything live. No overdubs, no one playing in anything that wasn't me, and trying to really stick to that idea. That kind of, then I would say that comes out of a very 90s influence of like what you're hearing is like fully represented and also how it's performed live kind of thing. And
Right.
everything's live and no extra tracks or anything. And coming into this, first I didn't even know that Dream Void and Dream Vessel were going to end up being two different albums. It kind of just made the most sense doing it that way. But going into the sessions for that stuff, I just wanted to do it a little different. So kind of recruited Nate. I was like, I got some songs roughly, and I was like, I don't really have any demos, I just have ideas for songs, and I'm not even going to tell you what the ideas are. You want to just come in and play bass and we'll just see what happens? And they were like, sure. And then Jack McKevitt, who me and Nate play with in the band I recruited him on guitar, and Jack is also someone I'd known for a really long time. Like before we played music together, he was playing this band Split Tongue with Seb Alvarez of Meth, like a long time ago. And so that was what too, or for a really long time we talked about doing just kind of a more experimental something together. So then I was like, hey, you want to play my new solo stuff? I have some ideas for songs. I don't have any demos for any of them though, and I do have guitar parts, but I'm not even going to tell you what they are, and you just come in and do whatever you want kind of thing. So it was like totally unrehearsed, and we just went in the studio, and it kind of played to me with really me. I just kind of wanted to see, could we even like produce anything that sounds good, or it's like, yes, this is like this is on the album kind of thing. And B, just kind of like seeing what was happening. So that's kind of also conceptually where the idea of like if you get into like Jungian philosophy, the idea of the dream void is like, how to tap into your collective subconscious is you have to get into the part of your mind where it is a void. Like if the idea is your mind is a sky, and if it's your different thoughts and things that are happening in daily life that get kind of imbued in your subconscious are like clouds, right? So if you have a mind that's really cloudy, it's like you have so many thoughts and things going on, it's really hard to tap into that like creative subconscious. So the idea of the dream void is getting to that space where once you're in the void, you don't know what's going to come out. That's like kind of like a pure creativity kind of like place to be. So that like conceptually, that's kind of what the album was, and kind of where we were coming from with these sessions, where I was just like, let's keep it really loose in terms of what we're communicating, of what we're going to do, and let's hit record and just see what happens. So out of that, it was like, oh, we got some cool stuff here. And we had so much that was like, wow, this is really cool. Oh, this is really cool. Oh, this one was really cool. And by going in with like not really having a set number of songs trying to do or anything like that, it ended up being 2 albums. So like half of it is the 3 of us playing together in like a band context that kind of has taken off in life of its own. We've played 1 show together as a trio. We're playing the record release for Dream Vessel in Chicago here as a trio. And then the other half of like the albums is still me doing everything myself solo, where it's like looped guitar, loop synths, and then the drums on top. So it's kind of, I think thematically too, the third piece of this is hasn't been recorded yet, but me, Nate, and Jack are going back into the studio in October to do like the next follow-up album that is just going to be just the 3 of us, just sticking to the trio format, and kind of seeing what comes out of that. And now that we've been doing it, playing together in this format for a little bit, doing shows, it's even like, I don't know if the next thing we're recording, the like part 3, is going to be a solo album, or it might just be a new band kind of coming out of this. We're still like kind of figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah, but at this point, you probably feel like it is less experimental in the sense that like now, even though you played with these folks, like before the first time you tried this, now you have like you have a catalog that you're like, well, this is what we have sounded like. So are you trying to push specifically against that next time, or is it once again just like show up and see what happens?
That's like, to go off of that's exactly kind of like, yeah, where we're going, where now that we've played some shows and have been playing in this format, the Dream Void, Dream Vessel is very much loose in the studio. Let's see what happens. And the follow-up that we're doing, going in the studio in October, is more laid out song plans, where it's more, it's almost, we've been calling it noise jazz, because it's almost like a compositionally like a jazz format, where there's like an A section and a B section, and then we're going to get back to the main riff, but it's still pretty loose arrangement-wise. But it's more structured in terms of like, okay, we have like these groupings of like 6 songs that we're trying to do now. But it's like every time we do it, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds like it'd be really fun to catch y'all play, but also like, it sounds like the kind of thing that would be like just genuinely fun to perform. you've got your second album coming out, and then it sounds like you're recording the third one within the same month. But also, like, you've got like Rust Ring stuff happening, and Tom just released a new song. Like, are you still finding it like easy to balance all of this stuff? Like, like when you're young, it's like I was in like 3 bands, at a time and stuff when I was younger as well. But now I have like other things going on. It's like, oh my God, how did I do that? Like, is it still just like, are you you're very good with a calendar and things like that? Is that your secret?
Yeah, I think, I've made some rules for myself where it comes on like taking on a band or a project of like, I've never had it happen yet where I've had like shows conflict with bands. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was one for me early on. I'm like, if I'm going to do multiple bands, because if it gets to the point where I got different bands getting shows offered on the same date, and now it's like prioritizing children or something. I'm like, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to prioritize one over another, and I've never gotten to that point. But I think for me, I've like had certain things where I'm like, I never want to get to a point with projects where it's like, it's like the whole band scheduling of like, we practice on Mondays, and that's the day where it's like a conflict of practicing, a conflict of shows, and somehow I've been able to avoid that. So there's just certain things that I've just like, I guess my line in the sand that I haven't hit yet. So then I'm like, okay, I can keep doing the multiple band thing. I think a big reason why I've also been able to do it is I have a very supportive partner who is, I think because it's like all these life things you have to balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Work, social life, relationships, and it's like that can also be tough and difficult to navigate, especially when you're doing like multiple bands, you're touring, and all this different stuff. Yeah, and my girlfriend's also very supportive of it and kind of gets the music life and gets like, yep, got to what are we doing this weekend? Well, I got a show, come hang if you want, but I won't be back late, and like has been very supportive of all that too, which also makes it easier to do the multiple band thing. um but I think it's also like, I don't know, you get in the rhythm of it, so it's like, um I've just been lucky in this where it's like typically when one band's writing and recording, another band's out doing shows or touring, and I've just been lucky where I've never had any conflicts with that really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, like Rust Ring, we're finishing up an album right now that should hopefully come out in the first half of next year. Like we're going down to Fest at the end of October. Yeah, so like Rust Ring has still been pretty active, busy band there. Um, I also play drums in the like post-hardcore band called the Eradicator.
Right. I was
Uh,
gonna mention that. Andy, I've known Andy for so long, or am I not allowed
oh,
to
really?
say like? I don't know. Does Andy tell people that like who's in the band or?
Well, yeah, it's
Okay.
such. Well, it's like a funny thing, right? Because that band, um, I feel like I've always gotten along with Andy in a musical sense because I think we operate very similarly. Where it's like, oh, he'll get offered a cool gig, and he's like, yep, I'm gonna take the gig, and it's like once you take the gig, then it's like, okay, who's available for this date?
Right. Yeah.
So it's a lot of that kind of like band scheduling, which for me is just like kind of works. I know for some people like that kind of planning doesn't work. It's like I need to know all the pieces in place before we're going on the tour. And Andy will be like, "Hey, I'm doing these dates. Can you do drums these dates?" And it's like, "Yeah, I can do that." He's like, "Oh, great," because I otherwise I don't know what I'm doing on drums. I'm like, I can do it. We got this. And so it's a lot of almost like on the fly kind of scheduling. But yeah, that band. I mean, the official list of band members is probably in like Spinal Tap numbers of like a dozen or so, I think, at this point. Where, yeah, it's almost like it's like scheduling for a work shift where it's like, okay, here's the date, who's free, who wants to do it.
Yeah. I think Scott Thompson has played guitar for
Oh,
that band before.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Scott Thompson like released one of my old bands, 7 Inches. I've known Scott for,
Oh wow.
25 years or whatever.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. It's awesome. And that also is a band that looks like a lot of fun to see live. I've, only just like heard the music and stuff. But y'all played Fest last year, right? So are you playing that as well this year? Are you doing
Yes.
double duty?
I'm doing double duty.
Yeah.
We played Fest last year. Yeah. So what the next Eradicator record is also coming out in October. So what we're kind of doing is like Fest is like also kind of like the album release show for it.
Right.
Kind of thing. Maybe some Chicago dates, Midwest dates. I'm not really sure. We're doing these Florida dates around Fest. But yeah, and that was a band too. I met Andy through Space Blood. He was at Space Blood. Boy, what a lineup for this show looking back. Space Blood played a show with Sincere Engineer at this DIY place called the Auxiliary Arts Center in Chicago. This is like 10 years ago. And Andy was just at the show and he saw us and he's like, you guys were insane. He's like, I play in a band where I wear a mask. You guys are doing your crazy stuff in masks. He's like, we need to like, it was basically like, I think we should be friends. And that was literally how we met.
Yeah.
And then, so I knew Andy for a few years and then eventually got a call where it was like, he had a gig already and his drummer couldn't do it. He was like, hey, he really only knew me for Space Blood, and I think Droughts a little bit at that time. He was like, I don't even know if you're into this kind of punk music, but you want to do drums? I was like, oh yeah, man, I love this stuff. Like, count me in. So I've been doing drums kind of on and off, depending on the shows and tours or whatever.
Sure.
It's around like 2018, 2019.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, that's all. Yeah, so that, I know. It's like officially, I think it's, like Scott, the last show I played with Scott might have even been last year, maybe 2 years ago. It's like we've literally done tours where every night is a different lineup.
Oh wow. Like he just knows somebody in that town and they show up and y'all play.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
where it's like, we did a tour where it was like me and Andy were the constants, and it's like a different guitarist every night, or it's like, just people he knows through the punk scene where they're like, I'll play a Eradicator show. So it's like every night you're playing different people.
That's awesome. That's wild. That would be very exciting for me, but also drive me up a wall. Like I would be just a nervous wreck the whole time. But like at the same time, if I was the drummer, I would have a different outlook than if I was the guitar player and the drummer was different every night. Like in Plague Walker, I could show up and play the songs and like other people could make mistakes and it like did not bother me because I didn't, like I held it down. So that was like reassuring to me. Like I'm not saying that people made a bunch of mistakes in Plague Walker, but we had like, it was one of those situations, like every time we went on tour, we had a different bass player or whatever, like Nate went on one, our friend Liam went on one, our friend Eddie went on another one. And, not saying that any of them really like made mistakes or blah, 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 but it would have been something that I was worrying about. Like if it was like I was playing guitar and it was like a different drummer every tour, I'd be like stressed. But like, I don't know. Is that sort of how it is? Is that a relief to you? Because you're like, as long as I hold it down, this person will know it well enough to jump back in where they're supposed to and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. And I think for me too, I think in a weird way, that's a motivator for me to like really also like just, not that I wouldn't do this in a band, but like really know the songs. And it's like, okay, I really need to like practice and make, you can't really kind of half-ass that, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
you got to be the rock. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you know that they're depending on you. So it's like, all right, I got to like get in the pocket, you got to know the songs well enough that you feel really comfortable in that space. Yeah. So I think in a way it's like pushed me to, just pushes you in a way where you kind of, you just got to nail it.
Yeah. Because they're going to look back at you like, where are we? So you got to be, you got to know, for sure. Yeah. Well, that all sounds really awesome. I think that it is wild, like how much you've got going on, and all of that sounds really exciting. Like I've said, Dream Vessel comes out October 17th, and then you're recording another album, you're going down to Fest, you're doing all that stuff. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you have going on that we should talk about before we sort of take off?
Boy, we covered a lot there. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
all the big stuff. Right, Tum just released a single. We're hoping to release some more stuff soon. Yeah, the Eradicator record also comes out October. Excuse me. But yeah, right now, yeah, Dream Vessel's been kind of my kind of like focus here, while other bands are kind of like finishing up writing, recording, that kind of stuff. And yeah, hopefully can keep it, just kind of keep it up, I guess, keep up the momentum. You know, it's like with this solo stuff, I feel like it's taken me some time to get to the point. It's like, you know how bands work, where it's like you gotta put all the work in, and then it kind of gets the self-perpetuating machine kind of thing going. So I'm just, yeah, trying to stay busy, you know.
For sure.
Hopefully keep it going. But yeah, it's been a busy fall, but you know, no complaints here. And then yeah, and I also appreciate, you know, the opportunity you've given me to fill in on drums with Coma Regalia.
Oh no, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I wasn't gonna bring that up, but yeah, but yeah, if you want to see William play drums soon, very soon, come to Lafayette on September 20th. But yeah, like what are your shows look like other than that one? Like what's your next gig like after, you know, the 20th here with us?
Oh man, after the 20th. So actually, well, it ironically, I'm playing a bunch of shows before the 20th.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I thought like that's only 10 days from now. That's got to be the next one.
Yeah.
But I'm wrong. Okay. So
No,
what's going on?
I'm literally doing some solo shows. I'm leaving that start the 13th. I'm doing like Grand Rapids, Pittsburgh, then going out to New York City, and I'm literally getting back into Chicago on Friday. Before then, we have the Coma show in Lafayette that Saturday, the 20th. So,
Oh my God.
keeping it busy, keeping it real, I guess. Yeah, and then in October, the Dream Vessel release show is on October 16th. At Reggie's here in Chicago, and then the album comes out on the 17th, and then me, Nate, and Jack are recording the follow-up starting on the 18th the next day.
And that was my conversation with William Covert. Thank you so much, William, for taking the time to chat with me. You know, I always joke around on the show about how if you play drums, you can stay consistently busy, and William is a prime example of that. I don't know how he manages it all, but I'm glad he does. Anyway, thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. Until next time, take care and do good things.